of the Sunday Assembly Charter. And it reads, "The Sunday Assembly is a godless congregation that celebrates life." Our motto, live better. Come on, say it with me. Live better, how often, wonder more. Our mission is to help everyone find and fulfill their full potential. Our vision, a godless congregation in every town, city, and village that wants one.
That's right.
So, today we're talking about birth. And when it was proposed that I be the host, my first thought was, I'm like the Prissy, I think her name is, in Gone with the Wind. Does anybody else remember this? I don't know nothing about birth and no babies. So, what I did was, I took to that font of knowledge, Facebook, and I asked my friends. And what they said was really interesting. I got a lot of, oh my gosh, I was shocked by how much love I immediately felt. And I got a few people who said, oh goodness, this person is real now. I knew they were real, but now they're real, right? And I think of birth as that amazing process where one person enters a room and two or even more than two leave, right? Wow, that's pretty amazing when you think about it. So we're going to have speakers, we're going to have a Try My Best, more songs, poetry, but before we do that, I need to ask the people who are here today, who are present at the birth of this Sunday assembly. Can you please stand? Anybody who was here at that very first assembly? These guys. And then how about first timers? Would you mind standing for a second? Congratulate you for overcoming that moment of trepidation that you felt in the parking lot. Right, okay, you with me? Right? You're sitting in the car, you parked the car, and you're like, seriously, what am I doing? I don't know these people. So yay for those of you who made it all the way in the door through. Once you make it to the door, you're not going back to that parking lot because we're like, come on. So we're really glad to see the newcomers. Alrighty, so birth. So let's start our journey through the topic of birth with some poetry. And our first reader is going to be Mathew Bond.
All right. Where the hell did he go?
Oh, language.
Yeah. Which word was the bad one?
That's right.
Where?
Yeah.
Where?
Well said.
Here the hell he is. That's better. We're going to read 3 poems today. And they were chosen at the Readers Writers Smoop. They were chosen by Brynda and me, 2 childless adults. Why? Because Sunday Assembly is radically inclusive. You're going to hear 3 poems on the birth process: pregnancy, then delivery, and then the baby. And they will be read by 2 men. Why? Because Sunday Assembly is radically inclusive. The first poem is by Sylvia Plath, who was famous for her sense of humor. But this is actually an amusing little poem. And I'm going to go right into the second one right after it. It's called Labor Pains. It's by a Japanese woman, a proto-feminist in the early part of the 20th century. And it is not humorous. The first one is a little bit amusing. The second one's more serious. Anyway, here they are. I was dancing and I'm old. Okay. Metaphors. I'm a riddle in 9 syllables. An elephant, a ponderous house. A melon strolling on 2 tendrils. Oh, red fruit, ivory, fine timbers. This loaf's big with its yeasty rising. Money's new minted in this fat purse. I'm a means, a stage, a cow in calf. I've eaten a bag of green apples, and I've boarded the train that there's no getting off. Labor Pains by Akiko Yosano. I am sick today, sick in my body, eyes wide open, silent, I lie on the bed of childbirth. Why do I, so used to the nearness of death, to pain and blood and screaming, now uncontrollably tremble with dread? A nice young doctor tried to comfort me and talked about the joy of giving birth. Since I know better than he about this matter, what good purpose can his prattle serve? Knowledge is not reality. Experience belongs to the past. Let those who lack immediacy be silent. Let observers be content to observe. I am all alone, totally, utterly, entirely on my own, gnawing my lips, holding my body rigid, waiting on inexorable fate. There's only one truth. I shall give birth to a child, truth driving outward from my inwardness, neither good nor bad, real, no sham about it. With the first labor pains, suddenly the sun goes pale. The indifferent world goes strangely calm. I am alone. It is alone I am.
We have Patrick Horst reading here today in front of his mother.
From the private ease of mother's womb, I fall into the lighted room. Why don't they simply put me back where it is warm and wet and black? But one thing follows on another. Things were different inside mother. Padded and jolly, I would ride the padded comfort of her inside. They tuck me in a rustling bed. I lie there, raging, small and red. I may sleep soon, I may forget, but I won't forget that I regret. A rain of blood poured round her womb, but all time roars outside this room.
Wow.
She is a professor of nursing at Vanderbilt. She is published on perinatal nursing, and today she's going to be speaking about birth outcomes and birth practices in the United States and comparing that to birth outcomes and practices in other countries. So please welcome Dr. Cathy Ivory.
Hey, lovely poems and now a professor with stats. I promise I won't be boring, I really do. So a little bit about me, because I think it helps set the stage for why I'm going to talk about what I'm going to talk about today, and why birth has kind of been my life's work. And it started when I gave birth for the first time, which I've done twice. And at the time, I don't even know, my friend Cathy Maxwell invited me today, and I don't even know if she knows this, but I was happily ensconced in a career in hotel sales and catering, and then had a baby. And thought, wow, this is pretty cool, and the whole experience is great, and the people who took care of me were wonderful, and I wouldn't choose the same provider again, but you don't know that until you go through the experience and where you are and all of that. And so I decided to go to nursing school when my kids were in preschool, and with the idea that I was going to finish nursing school and go on and become a nurse midwife. And then because I was already an older student, decided I would be too old to take call and didn't want to do that. So I decided to go into health IT instead. They're the same, really. Just kidding. So anyway, I did a lot of volunteer labor support. I taught childbirth classes for several years. Helped a lot of women, did their labor support as they went through the birth experience, was a labor and delivery nurse for a while, a mother-baby nurse, a lactation nurse, a high-risk pregnancy nurse, and now I talk to people about birth. And by the way, it is birth. Babies are born, pizzas are delivered. Really, really important to me, because I think it's important that we put in context that this is woman's work. Nobody can do it but us. Not everybody gets a chance to do it. Your birth experience shapes your entire life. You remember it for the rest of your life, probably in vivid detail, maybe in more detail than you want to remember sometimes. But it's important that we all put birth in that context. So what I want to talk to you about today is the current state of birth, I'm going to start with Tennessee, I'm going to go with the United States, and then I'm going to show you some very interesting statistics that you probably may not be aware of. I promise the stats part will be short, but I want then for us to end up with some questions, because I read your philosophy of always wonder. So I'm going to leave you with some wonder, things to wonder about. Okay, so let's go. Okay, so first in Tennessee, we have about 80,000 babies in Tennessee every year. And we have a decrease in the adolescent birth rate steadily over the past few years. That's important to know, because that's something that nationally and within the state of Tennessee we've been working a great deal on. We have about 70% of women in Tennessee receive first trimester prenatal care. And that means 30% of women in Tennessee do not. The other important thing for you to know is that it's statistically, you're much more likely to receive first trimester prenatal care if you are white than if you are black. And then we have about 2% of women report receiving no prenatal care at all. But you can see how different the stat is, again, if you are white versus if you are black. We have about 3.2 deaths per 1,000 births, neonatal deaths. And again, that stat is much higher if you are a black mother than if you are a white mother. And we really don't have a good handle on maternal mortality in the United States, in Tennessee, because we have not done a good job of assessing it. So in order for us to determine maternal mortality in the state of Tennessee, we have to go back through every female death certificate and either equate that back to a corresponding birth certificate for that woman in the last year, or because there's no way to capture, we currently don't capture on our death certificates whether the woman had been pregnant in the last year, which is really how the United States captures maternal mortality. So that's important, because we're going to show that stat nationwide and worldwide in just a second. So we need to get a better handle on what that's like in Tennessee. Okay, moving on. So we have about 4 million babies in the United States every year, and that's really been fairly steady, slightly declining since I've been in this business, which is really started in the late 80s. About 4 million a year, stays pretty much the same. We have about, in this country, almost a 33% cesarean birth rate. So more than 1 in 3 babies is born surgically in the United States. That rate has been steadily increasing. It went down just slightly in 2012, which is the latest statistics that I have, but that's significant, I think, when we talk about mortality and morbidity. We have about a 23%, so almost 1 in 4 women do not go into spontaneous labor in the United States, but they have labor begun for them, and which is another interesting statistic. almost 99% of birth in the United States happens in hospitals. About 56,000 women a year have their babies outside of the hospital. So 56,000 out of 4 million is not a whole lot, but that number is growing. And I don't know if any of you saw, but there was I believe it was a New York Times report this week that showed that out-of-hospital unattended birth in the United States was up 79% last year. And why that might be, we'll get to in our questions in a little bit. But that's an interesting statistic also. Greater than 90% of birth in the United States is attended by a physician, and only about 8% attended by a midwife. And in the United States, in 2011, the neonatal mortality rate, and neonatal means within the first 28 days of life, so from born alive but doesn't make it past 28 days, in the United States was 3.2 per 1,000. And those are CDC stats, so they're readily available for you on the CDC site. So let's move on. So I don't want you to read those little numbers, but here's what I want you to think about. In the United States, when we spend more on health care and more on birth, we spend more per birth in the United States than many and most developed countries. Our maternal mortality rate is going up. And it's gone up pretty significantly. Now, we might think about, part of it is because I'm a data geek, and data is important to me. We have gotten, I think I suggested to you that in Tennessee we don't have a good handle on that. And we're starting to get a better handle in the United States. So part of that increase may be because we're getting better at tracking it. But whatever the reason, it's too big and too many. And women do not have outcomes in the United States that we would think, given what we perceive to be the quality of our health care in the United States. So moving on. All right, so this slide, and again, it's gotten kind of blurry for context, but Merck for Mothers. Merck, of course, a big pharmaceutical company, has taken on maternal mortality worldwide, and they've got a lot of money to do it, and so we're going to let them go with it. And I am very involved in the Association of Women's Health OB and Neonatal Nurses. We represent the 350,000 nurses who take care of women and babies every year. We have a big grant with Merck right now studying one of the biggest causes of maternal morbidity and mortality, and that's maternal hemorrhage, either during birth or right after birth. So worldwide, it's typically hemorrhage and preeclampsia, or blood pressure cardiovascular related issues that lead to the deaths of mothers these days. So as Merck reports, the number of women who die in childbirth in the United States, greater than 60,000. About 2 times the number and 64th, 2 times the number in any developed nation, 64th in the world for the health of mothers. Not very good statistics. And I bet we think we do a really good job in the United States, and we really could do a lot better. So I think we're down to my wonder slide. Next. So here's what we can do. Some things that we can do, and we are trying to do, and that are underway nationally and around the world. And around the world, of course, the World Health Organization sets 2020, Healthy People 2020 goals. They were Healthy People 2000, Healthy People 2010, Healthy People 2020. So every 10 years, the World Health Organization sets goals for outcomes for mothers and babies in the world. And so we look a lot to them as we determine both where we are in the United States, where we are in Tennessee, and where we are around the world. So these are worldwide strategies to try to improve the health of moms and babies. So we got to get back to the whole concept that birth is normal. And I bet if I polled you, and I used to do this when I was a childbirth educator, and then when I was working in Women's Services Administration, because nurses are also all across the spectrum on their philosophy of birth. And so if I had you all stand up and I put this side of the room that birth is a perfectly normal process and nobody needs to come near me unless I want them to, and I just need somebody to help me birth this baby, to birth is a risky procedure, and I want to have as much help, technological and otherwise, with it as I possibly can. I think you would find nurses, providers, consumers, men, women would be all across that spectrum. Many of you would be in the middle. Some of you would be way over here. Some of you would be way over here. But I think the bottom line is we need to remember that birth is really normal. Women have been having babies for thousands of years and doing it very well. And then we need to, of course, increase our access to care, and we need to increase our access to care regardless of your race and ethnicity, where you live, your socioeconomic status. And we need to do better care coordination after pregnancy. So if you do have a problem, that we're doing a good job following up with whoever's going to take care of you, your primary care provider, after this baby is born, because some of the things that happen to a woman when she's pregnant lead into a higher risk for things like cardiovascular disease and diabetes later on. So we need to have really good coordination from the time a woman is pregnant until she goes through raising these children, because we want our mothers to be around to raise their kids. Standardized approaches to emergencies, we're working a lot on that. You know, the airline industry really did this, standardize the way pilots react and checklists and all of that sort of thing, and we're really doing that more and more in hospital birth these days, where we're trying to not minimize that every birth is different, but standardize, if we can, the way that we respond to emergencies and the way we respond to care. And timely and appropriate intervention, so if you need help, we're there to give it, and we give you the right intervention depending on what it is that you need. And we don't do the wrong things that might lead to greater complications later on. We're not going to there's some of those, and we're not going to get into them today. And no intervention unless it's timely and appropriate. So women's bodies are pretty wonderful, and they do a very, very good job. They tell us when they're ready to birth. They tell us when they're ready to start the birth process and go into labor. They tell us when that baby's ready to be born, and if we just listen to women, our outcomes might be a lot better. So, okay, now I think I'm on to questions. Yes, so questions for you to think about. So just take these with you in the next few weeks. So is birth a normal life event, or is it a risky medical procedure? You all have your own opinions about that, so be thinking about what you think about that. Who's the best birth attendant for normal, healthy women? So is that an obstetrician? Is that a midwife? Is it just a trained birth attendant? You know, in third world countries, we just want to make sure that somebody with some training is attending the woman at birth, because of the shortage of trained professional midwives. So just what training is needed? How do we make sure everybody has it? And how do we make sure that everybody is attended by the most appropriate birth provider? So we need to be thinking about that. Where's the best place to birth? You know, in the United States, more than 90% of birth happens in hospitals. Is that the best place? It's not the best. It's not the place where most women birth in many developed countries. Lots of out-of-hospital birth centers and lots of home birth. And so we did that in this country back into as late as the 1940s and 50s, and then modern obstetrics really started to advance, and birth moved from home to the hospital. And then is technology our friend? Is all the technology we use in healthcare, and we're talking about birth today and birth as an example, but is technology our friend? And when do we need to decide when to use it, and when do we need to decide not to use it, and listen to our bodies and what our bodies need us to do and when they need us to do it? And how do we assure safe access to care for all women and all newborns, regardless of where they live or what their race and ethnicity are? So happy to take any questions, but just wanted to leave you with those things to wonder about. And thanks for having me today.
Alrighty, it is time for our traditional moment of silence / moment of science. So, let's do our moment of science. So, during pregnancy, this is just some stuff to wonder at, right? During pregnancy, the uterus increases in size by 500%, going from the size of a peach to the size of a watermelon. Watermelons vary, but come on, wow, right? Wow. Worldwide, 4.3 babies are born every second. So let's see, during that moment of silence, if I let it go for 60 seconds, that's 258 babies. Or another way to think about it is during giving some loving was probably about 1,112. Now that's babies born. I don't know about babies conceived. Okay? I can't take any responsibility for that. That's all on Adam and the band. 4%. Well, come on, give me some loving. Think about it. 4% of American women are pregnant right now. Again, I'm not pointing any fingers at the band. Just saying. And I would like to say, I've been trying not to stare at her as we're talking about birth. Carrie, thank you for carrying the 4% banner for us. She's due next week. I thought it would be really cool to have her give birth here today. Best assembly ever! Right? It would have gone down in history. But no, she said no. Alrighty, so now, band time. Come on, get up here. Ladies dance.
I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show. True colors are beautiful. Like a rainbow. You with the sad eyes, don't be discouraged, so I realize it's hard to take courage in a world full of people. You can lose sight of it all. The darkness inside you can make you feel so small. But I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show. Your true colors are beautiful. Like a show me a smile. Show me a smile. Don't be unhappy, can't remember when last saw you laughing. Just makes you crazy, and you've taken off. Then you can call me up because you know I'll be there. And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show. Your true colors are shining through. So don't be afraid to let them show. True colors, beautiful.
rock you, rock you, we will rock you, we will rock you.
We have our own David Lyle.
All right.
These are our daughters. Oh, these are our daughters. Mary on the left. You know what I mean. Mary and Frances. And I want to tell you how they came to be born. So Doug Murray and I have been a couple for 24 years, and that whole time I've been a family lawyer. That means I do divorces and adoptions and help people do parenting plans. And I've always been very conscious of the irony that it's my job to help other couples access privileges that are not available to couples like Doug and me in Tennessee. We've gotten married and we've had children, but neither major event happened in Tennessee. In 2006, we went to Canada and got married. Mainly though, life together has been a quiet, gay scene involving cats. And a live-in mother-in-law, my dear sweet mother-in-law, Mary Lee. And that's us all together in the house. She lived with us for the last 5 years of her life. And she died knowing that we were expecting her first grandchildren, but 5 months before they were born. Also in 2006, we started, the year of the marriage, a 2-year odyssey trying to adopt a needy child in Tennessee through the public system, the Child Protective Services system. And here we are with one of the 4 foster kids who lived in our home over the course of those 2 years. We had to attend a 40-hour parenting class. It was a foster to adopt class taught by the Department of Children's Services. There were about 30 couples in that class, and the state slow-walked everything about us and our application. In fact, we were wondering why, we had finished the class weeks and weeks before, but the home study hadn't been finished and signed off on. And wondering why that was, when finally the case workers came to the house for the final interview. Now these caseworkers had taught the class, so they had already known this for like 3 or 4 months. But they finally got permission to go and do the final interview. And they walked in, they knew us, and they were very cheery, and they said, "Oh, Susan and Joe, we just made a permanent placement in their home last week. Isn't that awesome?" And I thought, yeah, that's awesome. And we're finally birthing our home study here. And in fact, so that's pretty much how it went. And over the course of the next year and a half, there was no permanent placement or likely or potential permanent placement in our home. So we finally gave up on adopting a needy child in Tennessee, and we decided to take matters into our own hands, and we decided we were going to get a donor for eggs, fertilize them with our own sperm in vitro, and we would find some awesome woman who would agree to carry the resulting embryo for us. I did the legal research, and sure enough, Tennessee is a horrible place for a same-sex couple to try to have a kid through, assisted fertility. In fact, there's a law on the books that says Tennessee won't enforce or honor any surrogacy agreement unless the intended parents are a straight married couple. So my research did say that California is the place you want to be, because in California, the law really respects the intent of the parties, of everyone involved, including the gestational carrier and the egg donor, who most often are not the same person. So we connected with a woman named Amanda, who became our egg donor, and that was through an agency that we worked with in California.
And it was really successful. It was terrific. 18 eggs. So, and we also found a really awesome gestational carrier who agreed to work with us, and her name is Suzanne. Here we are with Suzanne and her daughter and her 2 stepdaughters. Now, she's really a fantastic person, very kind and responsible and caring. She had born her own child and had also carried to term a baby for a European couple. So she had lots of experience with pregnancies, and since we had none, this was very comforting to us. And even though our babies couldn't be conceived in Tennessee, the event of retrieving sperm cells to make the babies did happen here. And then we put the concentrated gametes in a glass tube and lowered the tube into this kind of very, talk about intervention, as a very mechanical object that kind of looked like an upright stainless steel torpedo. You put the glass tube in this metal rod and you lower the rod into... And the torpedo is full of dry ice, and it instantly flash freezes the specimen. And then we put the torpedo out on the front porch and called up the UPS guy, and he came and picked it up, and he hauled it for us to California. Now, by then, we had already been to California more than once, trying to make our babies happen, not least of which, I think this was probably at least the second time we had gotten together with Suzanne. And we knew that coming up there were going to be many more trips to California. A lot of trips for us to make ourselves, not just send torpedoes. And so we divided those up between us, intending that one of us would always be home to help take care of Mary Lee, who was very elderly, as you could see, and had mild dementia. It was great. She always knew who we were. She remembered, boy, did she remember that there were babies going to come live in the house. But she needed someone in the home. So the clinic did its in vitro thing and said that if they got a good embryo that they could transfer to Suzanne's womb, it would be on November 14, 2009. And Suzanne was fantastic, and she said it was cool with her if one or both of us was present in the room during the transfer. So, because we wanted to be present and be part of the process, and I was thinking all the time, boy, it'd be awesome to be at the birth. This would be terrific. And so I went out to California. That one fell to me. So here I am visiting with Suzanne in the clinic. This was just minutes after the transfer. So we were all doing this, crossing everything we could think of. And at this point, we had to make a decision in that day, that morning, because at this point, out of 18 original eggs, there were just 2 viable embryos, the doctor was telling us. And he really wanted to transfer both of them. And he explained that the reason is if he transferred just one, then there was really, at best, a 50-50 chance of pregnancy, maybe even less, 25%. And also, since there was just one other embryo left over, if he froze it, then there'd probably, and later we wanted to try to use it, probably be less than 50-50 that it would remain viable. But if he transferred both, there was a 70% chance of a singleton, which is what we all wanted, yay! But there'd also be a 15% chance of twins. So we all talked we got Doug on the phone, we all talked, and Suzanne very bravely, and she really wanted this to work too, so we all agreed that we would transfer both embryos. And then I crossed all my fingers and got on the plane and flew home to Tennessee. Well, 3 days later, Suzanne called me up on the phone. I think she did reach me because I remember this conversation so vividly. And she said, "It is twins. I promise." She said, "I just did a pregnancy test. You know, the one where you take a jar of pee and you put a stick in it, and man, it went flash. from pink to blue. I mean, I've never, I've done a lot of these tests, she said, and I've never seen it turn this blue before. So she knew that something was really pumping out the hormones there. So sure enough, at 1 week after the transfer, they did an ultrasound, and there were both embryos. So we were, it was awesome, but kind of nerve-wracking. But Suzanne was excited too, and we were all on board. She was really delighted at about 3 months to share this picture of a baby bump. And last night when I was preparing this for the first time, the girls saw this picture, and they said, "Oh, that lady's pregnant." I said, "Yes, dear. That's you and Sissy inside there." And one detail that eluded us, however, was exactly when we should be in California for the birth of these 2 little babies in there. By our calculation, the full term would be August 9. So Doug flew out with Suzanne just about the time of that picture, the previous picture, for a visit with Suzanne's obstetrician, a terrific female doctor that she'd worked with on her own, at the birth of her own child. So this was someone she really trusted. And so this picture was taken on February 17, 2010, while Doug and Suzanne were waiting at the clinic to see the obstetrician. And I had told him very specifically, ask the obstetrician when these babies are going to come. And after the appointment, he went straight to the airport and landed in Nashville late that night. So I went out to the airport to meet him. And I met him I went inside and I met him at the security. And I had him sit down. And I gave him the news that his mother had died about 2 hours earlier. So while he was in the plane on the way home. And we forgot to talk about a lot of the details of the visit with the obstetrician, and including, I don't remember ever a specific report back on that due date. And I thought, well, we still have time, we'll worry with it later. But we did, we went on with life, and we buried his mama, and we carried on. And a month before the August 9 due date was, so that would be the week of July 4. And Doug was scheduled, he had an important professional conference to be gone the whole week in Washington, D.C. for this conference. And so in our planning, I said, well, you go ahead and go to that conference, and when you get home, we'll get on a plane and we'll fly out to California so we can be there 3 weeks early for the birth of the girls. And we didn't know that for twins, 8 months is full term. Not 9. And sure enough, the babies were getting really big, and Suzanne kept saying, Mary, because we had already named baby A Mary, is not turning. She's really, really stubborn, I can tell, and she's her head's up here, and she keeps pushing her sister up here, and I can tell she's not going to turn. And meanwhile, Suzanne was having all these Braxton Hicks contractions. They were making her really uncomfortable, and she was worried about them, and the doctor was giving her meds to try to control those, and no babies turning, and stubborn children, and on July 7, she telephoned me in the morning and said that she'd be visiting her obstetrician that day for a regular visit, and that she probably would get an increase in dose of the medication to control those Braxton Hicks. And so off she went to the appointment. Well, she got there, and the doctor checked her out and said, you know what, these babies are getting really big, and neither baby has turned, and neither baby's going to turn, and they're almost so big now that it's going to be very hard for this first baby to turn, and the Braxton Hicks are getting out of control. These babies are going to be born in 3 hours. Okay. 1 o'clock this afternoon, we're going in, we're going to do and deliver these babies, and we don't want an emergency on our hands, and it's going to be a C-section. So Suzanne took a big, swallowed hard, and pulled out her cell phone and gave me a call. And after that call, I rang up the airline and packed a bag and slept for a few hours and got up at 4:30 the next morning, hopped on for a 6 in the morning departure. And the flight was almost 5 hours long, with a change in Denver, and then finally got to Sacramento, and got the rental car, and jumped in the car, and drove through strange cities to the hospital, and got there and convinced security to please let me into the maternity ward. And I will say it was really tight, which I'm all for. I understand the need for that. And so I finally got in and wandered around the ward looking for Suzanne's room, you know, and so I finally find the room, and I walked in, and it turns out Suzanne wasn't there. Her bed was empty. She was down the hall. Later I learned for some checkup. And but there, excuse me, in a wheeled bassinet, I found 2 little wood nymphs swaddled in blankets, touching noses. And then a nurse walked in and demanded to know who I was. And I told her, and she said, "Well, it's about time. We've been wondering when you'd get here." And I said, "Well, I'm here now, and I want to hold these babies." On the upside, the hospital did have a room right next to Suzanne's, reserved for us, for the intended parents. And so Suzanne, when she came back, in fact, she visited with her, and then we wheeled the bassinet over to this room so I could be there to parent them and connect. They stayed with me in my room. I will say the nurses were great. They treated me just like they would any new mother of twins, and so they did not expect me to keep the babies in my room during the night. They kind of insisted, you know, with 2, you don't need to be feeding both of them alone every 2 hours, so let's put them in the nursery overnight. But otherwise, they were always with me for the next 2 days while the nurses trained me just like they would any new mom. And they showed me how to feed the babies and change the babies and swaddle the babies. And after that, Doug, it was about, the conference was over, and Doug came out to California, and we took our babies to an apartment he had found on Craigslist. And there, we put the babies in a drawer, like you do, to carry them from room to room safely, you know, so we could have them by our bed at night and carry them, set them in the living room during the day. And every couple of days, we packed them up in car seats and paid a call on Suzanne, who was recovering from surgery, Jeremy, at home, and doing pretty well. And for 3 weeks, we did that and had an occasional picnic. But mainly, we stayed home and admired our babies. Until it was the last time we thought we took them to a couple of postnatal, their first 2 pediatric visits in California, and confirmed that their eustachian tubes looked okay, and so they were doing well. And basically, we made the decision, as their parents, that we felt comfortable flying with them, so we could take them home to their real home in Tennessee. And here we are at the airport waiting for the plane. When we got aboard, it seemed full of really nosy women who wanted to know who the real father of each baby was. And we just smiled and said, "These babies are the result of our marriage, and they have 2 fathers. They have 2 real daddies." But that's another trying my best. When I see pictures of Mary and Francis together like this, I think of the first time I saw them in that bassinet. Lying side by side, nose to nose, and getting along so well. Never squabbling, no arguments. And I think of the nurse who said, "Well, it's about time. We've been wondering where you were." And sometimes I have fantasized that I should have said, We have spent 4 years trying to get here to this. I've been working on this for 4 years to get into this room, and we froze a specimen and then shipped it off to California, and we tried foster care. We've had 40 hours of parenting class, which is more than most, 40 more than most other parents. And we've had a home study, and these kids' grandmother grew old and died a few months before she had a chance to see her only grandchildren. We didn't know they'd be born in 8 months instead of 9. I didn't have the information. We spent every last nickel of our home equity bringing these babies into the world. And in any case, I'm here now, so get off my back. I'm trying my best. But that's not how life really is it? As the poet said, experience is for the past. And the moment is for now. And so I'm really glad that I just said, I'm here now, and I'm going to hold these babies.
Happy Mother's Day.
That this assembly is so radically inclusive that story wasn't radical, it was just inclusive.
Sing one more song here. 2, 3, 4. I did it all. I did it all. Yeah. Sing with me. Hope when you take that jump, you don't feel the fall. Hope when the water rises, you build a wall. Hope when the crowd screams out, they're screaming your name. Hope if everybody runs, you choose to stay. Hope that you fall in love and it hurts so bad. Only way you can know is give all you have. And hope that you don't suffer, take the pain. Hope when your moment comes, you'll sing, I did it all. I did it all. I owned every second that this world could give. On so many places, the things that I did. And with every broken heart, I swear I lived. You guys sound great. Hope that you spend your days, but they all add up. And when that sun goes down, I hope you raise your cup. Wish that I could witness all your joy, all your pain. Until your moment comes, you'll sing, I did assembly. Last time we did this song, she said, you know what, if you close every Sunday assembly out with this song, it'll be okay. But we're going to do it again, because we do what Brynda says there. All right, so wait, before we hold on. I got to introduce everybody from the Sunday assembly. Oh, man. Now I'm out of here, give myself a breath. So let me introduce the Sunday Assembly Unnamed Assembly Band. We are unnamed because so many of y'all are a part of it, but I want to introduce Deb Dennison on vocals with us. Her husband Ray on keys. One of the originals, Patrick Horst, is on the guitar with us today. Chris Shannon on drums. We have Marina Campbell filling in for vocals. Thank you so much for last minute. She didn't know she was singing this morning. Stephen Phelps, arranger, composer, artist extraordinaire. Ben Stuckey on bass. Scott Tabachman in the back. Thank you very much, Scott. Thanks, Jeremy, and everyone for running the sound. And Mr. Franco Hasaguchi on saxophone and choir. Thank you to the Unnamed Ascending Choir. All right, let's get this song going. So everybody needs to be moving now.
Here we go. I can play now?
Now you can play.
Okay.
Not too fast.
Thank you.